On 31st of May 2024, Koei-Tecmo officially announced a new Dynasty Warriors game during the PlayStation State of Play. The game marks not only a 7-year return of a main entry since Dynasty Warriors 9, but also the 25th anniversary of the series itself. The game is called Dynasty Warriors Origins, which finally made a release on 17th of January 2025. In every main entry of the Dynasty Warriors series, the game is always a retelling of the Romance of the Three Kingdoms. It's the same story over and over again, with some different takes and alterations. Excluding Dynasty Warriors 6 and Dynasty Warriors 9, most games are usually improvements of what came before them, whether that be the roster or gameplay. Dynasty Warriors 9, that came out in early 2018, was planned to be a total revamp of the series as Omega Force and Koei-Tecmo transformed the game into an open world. This was done to attract new audience to the series. However, what happened was the exact opposite. Technically speaking, the game was terrible. Not only the game failed to attract new fans, but it also received a lot of negative criticism from the fans of the series. Rightfully so, honestly. With the heavy reception towards Dynasty Warriors 9, Koei-Tecmo and Omega Force needed to bring back the good faith from their mainline audience. Koei-Tecmo assigned Sho Tomohiko as the lead producer, who is a senior employee of the company. His earliest work in Koei-Tecmo includes Destrega for the Sony PlayStation in 1998, where he acted as the action supervisor. For the Dynasty Warriors series, he was the lead designer for Dynasty Warriors 5 and the lead director for Dynasty Warriors 6. Before Dynasty Warriors Origins, originally, Koei-Tecmo wanted to create a sequel called Dynasty Warriors 10. According to Sho Tomohiko from an article at BBC.com, Dynasty Warriors 10 was supposed to be the next game of the series, but it was ultimately scrapped because fans might be tired of the similar games over and over again. Sho even implied at BBC.com that the development of Dynasty Warriors 10 took place immediately after the release of Dynasty Warriors 9, before the COVID-19 pandemic, out of the poor reception of the later mentioned game. On another article from SiliconEra.com, the lead programmer of Dynasty Warriors Origins, Oba Masamichi, claimed that the original Dynasty Warriors 10 plan would have been an extension of gameplay from Dynasty Warriors 7. In a way, the game would have been a direct sequel to Dynasty Warriors 8, since that game also was an extension of Dynasty Warriors 7. With the release of PlayStation 5 back in 2020, Sho Tomohiko wanted to utilize the technology to have a Dynasty Warriors game with thousands of enemies on screen. Not only did the new technology is possible for doing so, but Koei-Tecmo has maximized their in-house graphic engine called the Katana engine. This also goes in line with the company wanting to push more AAA games for this decade with releases such as Wolong Fallen Dynasty, Wild Hearts, and Rise of the Ronin. In short, Koei-Tecmo and Omega Force wanted Dynasty Warriors Origins to be a AAA quality Dynasty Warriors game. Therefore, Dynasty Warriors Origins is a complete revamp of the Dynasty Warriors series. I have spent more than 50 hours in the game as of writing this script. It's safe to say that I really like the game. I won't lie, I came to Dynasty Warriors Origins with a very negative mindset. I was very skeptical about the game after their demo in Tokyo Game Show 2024. The game showed some red flags such as clone moves of existing Dynasty Warriors characters. Not to mention, the last few mainline Musou games were either terrible at worst or underwhelming at best. However, I gave Dynasty Warriors Origins a shot right after I tried the demo back in November 2024. The game was actually pretty good. The biggest praise I have is how Omega Force was able to revamp the gameplay and made it engaging without losing its identity as a Dynasty Warriors game. Before I begin the review, I would like to give a special shout out to my favorite Filipino VTuber, Morphe. This video is not even possible without him, as he was the one who gave me a free Steam key for Dynasty Warriors Origins. Morphe has been a supporter since I started this channel and has continued to do so since. I cannot stress how much I'm grateful to him. This video is a review of the game based on my 50 hours of playtime. I only finished one full campaign in the game, which is Cao Cao's campaign, and I plan to finish the other campaigns on stream. So how good was Dynasty Warriors Origins? Well, let's talk about it. Considering the name, Dynasty Warriors Origins does not cover the entirety of the Three Kingdoms saga like in the last 3 entries. In terms of story, the game went for a more similar approach like Samurai Warriors 5, focusing only on the beginning act of the saga. The game starts at the Yellow Turban Rebellion and ends at the Battle of Chibi. Unlike the previous games where you experience the story in an arcade-style game, Dynasty Warriors Origins allows you to experience it as an action RPG. Therefore, you only get to experience the story through the lens of one character, the nameless protagonist, commonly referred to as Ziluan. Now, I need to mention that this action RPG approach has been done previously by Omega Force for their main Warriors games. Dynasty Warriors Origins is more or less the Dynasty Warriors equivalent of Samurai Warriors Spirit of Sanada, in which in that game, you experience the story based on the lens of the Sanada clan. The protagonist, Ziluan, is a fully fictional character designed for this game alone. He is a man with amnesia in search of his forgotten past. While he is searching for his lost memory, he needs to fight through his way during the troubled times of the late Han Dynasty. This is pretty much the tale of Ziluan, while everything about the Three Kingdoms saga is a backdrop for him. One of the biggest criticisms that Dynasty Warriors 9 has was its open world. Because of this, Koei-Tecmo and Omega Force opted to not have an open world for the next entry. Instead of an open world, Dynasty Warriors Origins has an RPG-style hub world. The hub world consists of multiple provinces. Each province has a town that enables Ziluan to buy weapons and items, as well as keeping track of his progress. There are 2 types of battle that Ziluan can participate. The first one is major battles that progress the story, in which these are battles from the Three Kingdoms saga, such as battles of Shishui Gate and Hulao Gate, to name a few. The second one is minor battles, which include small-scale conflicts and skirmishes. Participating in small battles will not only increase Ziluan's stats, but also increase the peace level of the respective province. You see that blue bar on the bottom right of the screen? That is the province's peace meter. If you are able to fill the peace meter, you will get a unique reward from that province. As I mentioned earlier on this video, this was done to bring the Dynasty Warriors series into the next level instead of relying on old traits. I gotta say, I really do like this approach. Turning the game into an action RPG honestly makes it more engaging. I do believe this style of game would bring more interest to a newer audience. As you go on the journey with Ziluan, you will encounter familiar characters from the Dynasty Warriors series. There is a total of 47 characters present in this game, but only 10 of them are playable. As you know already by now, the 10 characters only act as secondary characters to Ziluan. I didn't like this at first when Koei-Tecmo announced it in Tokyo Game Show 2024, for one big reason. You have less characters to play, which means less moveset, which finally means clone characters. Despite being mostly NPCs, I don't like having iconic Dynasty Warriors characters as clones. I have mentioned this multiple times that weapons should be part of a character's identity. However, I have changed my mind about the game after the demo because of one important aspect: the combat. As you know, when it comes to Dynasty Warriors, the combat system remains very similar in every entry. An exception goes to Dynasty Warriors 6 and Dynasty Warriors 9, as Omega Force attempted to design a more in-depth combat system, but they end up being even more brain-dead. The combat revolves around 2 types of attacks: normal and charge attacks. Every character has 6 normal attack chains, in which every normal attack chain can close with a charge attack. Every character has the same pattern of attacks, despite having distinguished weapons and movesets from each other. The pattern of attacks in Dynasty Warriors games are usually square triangle for a launcher, square square triangle for a stunner, and square 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 triangle for an all-rounder. Dynasty Warriors Origins approached the combat with a different direction, and in my opinion, this is the best combat system that we have for the series so far. Omega Force was able to bring in a more in-depth combat system without compromising its identity as a Dynasty Warriors game. I have stated multiple times that when it comes to combat for a Musou style game, Capcom's Sengoku Basara Force Sumeragi is my gold benchmark. Capcom was able to implement the masterful combat system of the Devil May Cry series in their take of a 1 vs 1000 hack and slash game. It is something that I always believed Koei-Tecmo should take notes from, considering they are somewhat of a pioneer to modern 3D hack and slash. In the Sengoku Basara series, especially Sengoku Basara Force Sumeragi, every character does not play the same. No character shares a similar pattern of attacks with one another, as every individual has a unique playstyle. Not only characters are more unique in the game, but also their moveset reflects their respective personality really well. Omega Force was able to implement something similar to that of Sengoku Basara's combat. In Dynasty Warriors Origins, you have 10 different weapons with each of them having a different playstyle. Here are some few examples. The sword has a typical Dynasty Warriors normal and charge attack style. The spear has a Dynasty Warriors 6-like style, where it has a string of normal attacks and a string of charge attacks. The gauntlets are stance-based weapons to which you can perform different attacks based on the character's stance. The chakrams are timing-based weapons to which you can enhance your charge attacks on the right time you receive your chakrams back. The game also implemented different types of charge attacks. Considering it doesn't follow the basic normal and charge attack patterns like the previous entries, Dynasty Warriors Origins implemented something that I call conditional charge attacks. Charge attacks vary depending on the character's condition. For example, stationary charge attack is performed by pressing the triangle button when your character is idle. Motion charge attack is performed by pressing the triangle button when your character is moving. Normal to charge attack is performed by pressing the triangle button after performing the normal attack with the square button. Aerial charge attack is performed by pressing the triangle in the air. Blocking charge attack is performed by pressing the triangle button while blocking with the L1 button. I really love this addition, and it is something that I feel like Omega Force took ideas from Sengoku Basara. Not to mention, just like Sengoku Basara, attacks can be cancelled, thus enable players to perform more combo chains. Dynasty Warriors Origins also has R1 abilities which are called Battle Arts. Omega Force has been applying R1 abilities in their other games such as Dynasty Warriors 9, Warriors Orochi 4, Samurai Warriors 5, and even spin-offs such as One Piece Pirate Warriors 4. I do believe R1 abilities has become the standard for Koei Musou games, and honestly, they should keep it. The battle arts do give more style and substance to the combat mechanics of Dynasty Warriors Origins. Just like in other Koei Musou games, the battle arts are consumable attacks. Whenever you perform a battle art, you will consume a specific number of your bravery meter. To fill up your bravery meter, you can either find wine jugs or perform perfect dodges against an enemy officer. Worth mentioning that battle arts can also be cancelled. Once again, players can perform multiple combo chains with the battle arts, giving more depth to the combat. Speaking of dodges, Omega Force built the gameplay with some elements of Soulsborne-like games in mind. Despite being a 1 vs 1000 hack and slash game, the game focuses a lot on boss fights against enemy officers. I had my doubts when I first saw this in Tokyo Game Show 2024, but after playing it for myself, I was impressed. This is also a good way to make the game more challenging considering enemy officers are being treated as a major threat. Speaking of enemy officers, I am really glad that Omega Force decided to put boss battles in the game. Enemy commanders in this game are being treated like a boss fight. Some commanders even have specific one-on-one boss fights such as Zhang Jiao in the Yellow Turban Rebellion and Lu Bu at the Battle of Shapi. Omega Force has applied these types of boss battles in their other games like One Piece Pirate Warriors and Fists of the North Star Ken's Rage. It took a while for Dynasty Warriors to have this, but we are finally here regardless. I do have some gripes with the combat. Despite every weapon plays differently and reflects the respective user's personality, some of them look really off with Zuluan wielding them. For example, the halberd, which is Lu Bu's iconic weapon, reflects Lu Bu's raging personality. However, this doesn't look well with Zuluan wielding it. Not to mention, Zuluan has a smaller body portion than Lu Bu, He's wielding the weapon twice his size and acts like a big man while doing so. I understand why this is a thing, since you mainly play as Ziluan. This is just me nitpicking, and I hope you are able to play more with the Dynasty Warriors characters in the future. Another gripe I have is the Musou attacks. Musou attacks in this game are somewhat monotonous, as they are just big slashes that clear up enemies in front of you. Pretty underwhelming if you ask me. I do want to see more style and variety in Musou attacks as how they did in games like Dynasty Warriors 8. Regardless, Omega Force did an excellent job with the game's combat system. Despite what you may think about Koei-Tecmo and Omega Force, we need to give credit where credit is due. I think this was what they wanted the combat to be like in Dynasty Warriors 9, however, they were able to realize it here in Dynasty Warriors Origins. It's a fresh take of innovation without compromising the game's identity. So, does this mean Dynasty Warriors Origins have the best combat system in a Musou game? For the main Dynasty Warriors games, I say yes. But for Musou-style games in general, that honor still goes to Capcom's Sengoku Basara Force Subaragi. I greatly appreciate that they decided to rework the gameplay and make it work, instead of constantly relying on old system. Despite the combat being excellent in this game, I do believe it still has a lot to improve. However, Dynasty Warriors Origins has a good start for a more in-depth combat, and hopefully, Omega Force continues to improve on this in the future entries. Considering Sho Tomohiko said he wanted more soldiers on screen by utilizing the Katana engine with the latest console, Dynasty Warriors Origins provides the largest battles in the series' history. The scope of battles in this game is huge. Thousands of soldiers on screen at the same time, thus giving players a more immersive experience. Not only we have thousands of soldiers on screen, Dynasty Warriors Origins is the best looking Dynasty Warriors game to date. Performance-wise, I barely have any issues while playing this on my PC. Probably some minor frame drops, but overall, it's very stable. Omega Force and Koei-Tecmo did a fantastic job on optimizing their Katana engine. To make battles more immersive, Ziluan can command troops to perform stratagems. Stratagems can be very useful on the right circumstances to weaken certain enemy formation. This will give you an advantage fighting enemy officers of that formation. Some has considered that this makes the game more strategic, but I don't find this game strategic in any way. The game is still a pretty straightforward hack and slash, and there is nothing wrong with that. The stratagem is a nice gimmick to make the gameplay more immersive, and I'm really okay with it. Stratagems also have some really cool animation. Speaking of animation, there is one cool detail I found on Ziluan. Whenever Ziluan walks through an obstacle, he doesn't just walk as if nothing is there, he leans towards the obstacle as you can see here. I give massive props to Omega Force with their attention to detail. This game also brought back a feature from the older games. One-on-one duel against an enemy officer is finally back. The duel is a mix of that of Dynasty Warriors 4 and Dynasty Warriors 6. You go one-on-one against an enemy officer while having soldiers surrounding you. One feature I really appreciate from this game is checkpoint. Whenever you lose a battle, whether because your character dies or the commander dies, you don't start from the very beginning. The game allows you to start from a certain checkpoint. It's a very welcome feature considering battles in this game are longer as well. Dynasty Warriors has come a long way. The latest entry was able to provide players with an immersive large-scale battle experience, as the series always thrived to have. It's a really good effort from the developers for a series that is 25 years old. Dynasty Warriors Origins is a game to celebrate the series' 25th anniversary. Omega Force and Koei-Tecmo wanted to give their best effort for a next generation entry. For the most part, I think they did a really good job with this game. The game was able to revamp the series while maintaining its identity at the same time. It is a good starting point to bring Dynasty Warriors to a newer generation of audience. The gameplay and the world building can keep you busy for hours. As of writing this, Dynasty Warriors Origins was able to sell 1 million copies worldwide in a span of a month. For a Dynasty Warriors game, that is an achievement, and you got to give credit to Omega Force and Koei-Tecmo. This also means the game was able to bring in new audience, just as Sho Tomohiko intended from the start. Now, would I recommend people to play Dynasty Warriors Origins? I say if you are still doubtful with the game, at least give the game a shot. If you are worried about the game's price, I would suggest you wait for a discount before getting the game. I was one of the people who downloaded the game at first, but I ended up enjoying it more than I expected. Despite the game being good, it still has a lot to be desired. However, this is a step in the right direction for the series, and I hope that Omega Force and Koei-Tecmo would expand on what they have here in the future entries. With how well the game is doing financial-wise, I have a good feeling that they will. I think I have said my piece in regards to Dynasty Warriors Origins, as I'm going to do a complete run for the game. There are probably more things I could have said about the game, but I think I have covered at least the core aspects. So that's it for the review of Dynasty Warriors Origins. What are your thoughts on the game? Do you like this game? Is it a good entry to the Dynasty Warriors series? Or do you think otherwise? Let me know in the comment section below. With that being said, this is me, Profar. If you like this video, give me a thumbs up. If you dislike this video, give me a thumbs down. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe. Join the Profar Mokoi Hunter X Discord server. I will see you guys in the next video.